Remember the early 2000s when teams like Virginia, Miami, and Virginia Tech, they were all at the top of the sport, and you had guys like Steve Slayton and Pat White and Noel Devine on Virginia just being absolute studs, and dudes in Miami that were putting like 10 guys in the NFL every single year for like 10 years, and then Virginia Tech with Mike Vick and him bringing them to the national championship. Like these teams were, in the top five, top 10 every year, and like they were really good teams. Last year, a few of these teams, the Miami, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, they made a little bit of a run last year. Now Miami didn't had a bit of a disappointing season for what their expectations were, but they're showing some growth under Mario Cristobal. Neil Brown was the number one dude on the hot seat. Had been for a few years. He comes right back around and whips off a 9-win season. Virginia Tech had a pretty good season last year. They're growing under Brent Pry. So a lot to look forward to. Like West Virginia, they have a 6.5 game win total over under. It's a heavy juice to the over if you're interested in betting. But they got a lot to look forward to. Got Garrett Green coming back, Neil Brown with the resurgence. They have the third offense in returning production coming back next year. However, on the defensive side of the ball, it's 95th overall in FBS. So a lot of new faces for West Virginia, and they do have a pretty tough schedule. So they get both Kansas schools, Kansas State. They get Oklahoma State. They get Arizona, UCF. So those are some of the top teams in the Big 12. And then on top of that, they're out of conference is the Backyard Brawl is back again from last year. And then they also have Penn State as an opener. So they do have a tough schedule. And Neil Brown he just got an extension, so he should be fine now, but he will be criticized a lot. So I think that they'll be all right. Heading into this year, I don't expect them to have 10 wins or anything like that. But to see them back in the mix is a really good sign. Bringing back that nostalgia a little bit. It's peaking from the early 2000s. Virginia Tech, on the other hand, 7.5 win total for this year right now. Heavy juice to the over again. We got Kyron Jones returning. He looks like to be an absolute stud athlete. In returning production, Virginia Tech is number one in FBS, number one offensively, and then number 12 defensively. So, with a pretty solid team last year, they're bringing back everyone. They're going to have another solid year this year, and the schedule is relatively favorable. They open up with Vandy, Marshall, Old Dominion, and Rutgers. Old Dominion has caused them some problems recently, so don't want to look too far ahead on that. But a relatively favorable schedule. Then they have no Florida State, no Louisville, and they have Clemson at home. So there's a lot to look forward to for Virginia Tech here. And then lastly, let's touch on Miami. Their win total is 9.5. Now it is juiced to the under, but a 9.5 win total for Miami, that they'll take that from what they have seen over the past 20 years. Really all of these teams have not come close to the level of potential that they did in the early 2000s. So they got Cam Ward transferring in, one of the most coveted transfer portal quarterbacks that was available in this cycle. So they got him coming in. A lot of guys returning on defense. They might have the best defender, best D-line guy in the conference in Ruben Bain. And offense should be pretty improved. The schedule is pretty workable. They have Florida to lead off. They got Virginia Tech, who's also on here, Louisville, and Florida State. But honestly, they'll probably be favored in about 10 games. So their schedule is very workable. I think they're third in the odds market to win the ACC behind Florida State and Clemson. So these teams could be making a run again. Could we get these programs to build up to what they used to be like in the early 2000s? I hope so, because we've seen what these programs were rocking like at full potential. It'd be great to see them get there again.